This is Tante Belle Cose, a podcast about the many beautiful things you can discover in Italy. I'm your host, Danielle O'Terry. I'm a writer, art historian, and the founder of Feast Travel. Right now, I'm enjoying my down season, which is impossible for an entrepreneur to actually enjoy because, of course, I'm thinking about my website and all of the accounting that's been piling up. I have so many receipts I need to file. But we don't really have too many people traveling on the ground in Italy right now. Just a few, but our guides have everything well under control. And the big trip planning season hasn't yet begun. That starts right after Christmas. So, this is an opportunity for me to share with you a few important things that are coming down the pike for 2025 that you should be mindful of when you're planning your trip. And let me tell you, 2025 has some big differences when it comes to pricing. Now, if you are part of our subscriber community, I would like to invite you to a Q&A session on Monday, December 2nd at 8 p.m. Eastern Time. We'll do this live on Zoom, and you can throw any questions you have at me. And if you're not able to join us live, you can email me your question, and I will answer it on the Zoom. And then later, I will send you a video recording of the Zoom. Now, to clarify, this podcast is absolutely free. And if you're listening on Apple Podcasts or YouTube or Spotify and you've hit the subscribe button, thank you so much. Subscribing directly to the podcast helps me a lot. But the subscriber community itself is on Substack, and that's a subscription. You can access it at danielleoterry.com or feasttravel.com or go directly to Substack. It's just $8 a month or $80 for the entire year. And as part of this subscriber community, you get direct access to me. We have an ongoing subscriber chat. You can throw your questions in there, and I answer them as soon as I see them. And this additional Q&A is a session that's just another benefit of being part of our community. So if you'd like to join us, please do subscribe. I will be sending the Zoom link directly to our subscribers. Now, for those of you who are just beginning your trip planning journey, this episode is designed to distill and highlight all of the things that you're probably encountering on Google or that you may be hearing from friends and family. I want to give you an accurate, clear picture of what these things really are because, especially from social media, the view can be distorted. This episode is extrapolated from a free download that I have available on my website, feasttravel.com, called 5 Essential Things to Know Before Planning Your Italy Trip. And when I sat down to update the file for 2025, I thought, I should just make this an episode. A few months ago, I did a very popular reel on Instagram with the same topic, and it was widely shared. So this is designed to be useful, actionable, and put you on the right path. So right before I dive into those 5 essential things you need to know, you have no doubt been hearing a lot about over-tourism, so let me just address that for a moment. It's not just in Italy, it's happening around the world, and of course the most famous case was this past summer when tourists who were departing the cruise ships in Barcelona were being sprayed with water guns. Now, I've said this before, I don't see this trend stopping anytime soon. The cruise industry is booming, and people want their Instagrammable moment. They're not going to be talked out of it. But the response, or perhaps I should say the consequence, is that in these most popular places, and now I'm specifically talking about Florence, Venice, Rome, the prices are really going up. Now, it makes sense in Rome because 2025 is a papal jubilee year. This happens once every 25 years. But the place where we're seeing prices skyrocket the most is Florence. The properties that we normally work with are doubling their prices. And so that means it's not going to be an intuitive search for price when you consider the star level of the hotel. So a 3-star or a 4-star hotel is not necessarily going to be priced as it normally would. And this is something really important to keep in mind. Now, if over-tourism and these big crowds in the most popular places is something that you just don't want to deal with, take this advice. Now is the best time to explore these less popular places, many of which I'm discussing here on this podcast, because there are fantastic hotels and amenities and opportunities for people who want to go beyond what TikTok is dictating. And TikTok is dictating a lot of things. Now is the best time to explore these lesser-known places, which are about to become very popular in the near future. This is a beautiful little window of opportunity. Okay? let's move on to those 5 essential things. Let's start with the Amalfi Coast. It has long been one of Italy's top destinations, but social media has sent tourism into the stratosphere. And there are few places that are as photogenic as Positano, especially with drone photography. But people's ideas about the Amalfi Coast do not align with reality. People envision themselves hopping between the villages, shopping, having a spritz on a beautiful beach, getting on and off ferries and small boats. And Instagram is full of images of people in glamorous dresses, twirling their pasta, having breakfast on a balcony that faces a bunch of beautiful houses that tumble toward the sea. Well, this can be the reality if you're staying in a very nice hotel. But the thing about the Amalfi Coast is, it's a series of dramatic sea-facing cliffs, and all of the villages are built into the crevices. And because it's so popular, it's very difficult to move through this already dramatic landscape. There are many high-end luxury hotels and resorts that will give you this experience. But the much more affordable apartment rentals that you will find in the cliffs will not. These are places that are accessible with stairs. Now, if you've watched Ripley on Netflix, the most recent series that's shot in black and white, watch Dickie and Marge and Tom going up and down the stairs because that was actually filmed in Capri, but it gives you a very realistic picture of what to expect of those Amalfi Coast apartments in the hills. Now, the public beaches are short and rocky and adjacent to the ports where the big ferries come in. They're not that nice. The luxury hotels, however, have their own beach clubs. Now, moving between the towns is tricky, and that's why an Amalfi Coast vacation needs some time. What you don't want to do is plan an itinerary that goes Venice, Florence, Rome, Amalfi Coast with just a couple of days to see the coast, to see Capri perhaps, and then Pompeii. You just can't do it. The landscape is far too difficult to move through and then throw in tons of traffic. Moving between the towns is so difficult because there is just one cliffside road and there's two-way traffic on it. So you have the giant tour buses, then you have taxis, and then all the tourists who are trying to navigate what is, kind of a scary road. Maybe for the first time, they don't know what they're doing, and maybe they're driving stick shift and they're not used to that either. If heights make you nervous, then what you should do is go to YouTube, and there are lots of videos where you can preview the experience. Another comparable might be the Pacific Coast Highway in California between Monterey and Carmel. That is a very similar experience. But I have had clients who have said to me, I get really carsick and I don't like heights. How do I do the Amalfi Coast? The answer is, don't do the Amalfi Coast. It's those two things in abundance. So the way to do the Amalfi Coast right and to do it justice is to stay in a nice hotel. And the hotel restaurants are actually very, very good. A good Amalfi Coast trip includes a private boat ride because, again, the beaches aren't great. So you want to be able to go out on a boat where you can swim and explore the coves. You can go around the Ligali Islands. There are restaurants that are reserved just for the boats alone. You really do feel like a movie star. Or you could choose to do a car tour. And yeah, you'll be stuck in some traffic, but you'll be with a knowledgeable driver who can talk to you about the different points of interest along the way and make a reservation for lunch. And it's a really fun way to get inside all of the nooks and crannies of the Amalfi Coast, and also to visit Ravello, which is on the cliffs above the coast. Let somebody who knows what they're doing take charge. It's not inexpensive, but it's one of those things that I think is well worth the price. Now, if this vibe is not your vibe, then consider the Cilento coast, which is immediately south of Amalfi. It has long sandy beaches, small fishing villages along the coast that feel like Amalfi did 40 years ago. The food is fantastic. There's an amazing blue grotto. The swimming is great. It's an ideal spot for families, and it's where Italians go on vacation. Number 2, Rome is not a place to wing it. You have to make your plans, especially this coming year with the Papal Jubilee, celebrated once every 25 years. Now, a lot of people are just crossing Rome off of their travel list because of the Jubilee. Here's my feeling. Rome is always crowded. And actually, I really hope that in 2025, with the arrival of so many religious tourists, that a lot of people will be exploring many of the other really amazing sites besides the Colosseum, Vatican, Trevi Fountain, and Spanish Steps. By the way, The Spanish Steps are steps in front of the Spanish embassy. That's it. I have probably ranted about this before, but I just want to say it's not such a big deal. Don't worry about making it a feature of your itinerary. Okay, rant over. The Colosseum and the Vatican are attractions on everybody's list, so purchasing skip-the-line tickets far in advance is critical. Now, with the Colosseum, you can only do it exactly 30 days before. So the best thing to do is just to buy a tour from a reputable company. Don't buy the tour from a reseller. Viator and Get Your Guide are resellers. They are not the direct tour companies. People sell the tours, and then when they are unable to get the tickets, they actually just cancel the tour and you're stuck. Purchase a tour from a reputable tour company directly from the company, and you will have the best possible experience with a knowledgeable guide who knows how to navigate the crowd and will have skip-the-line tickets for you. Now, Rome is also home to countless wonders beyond the Colosseum and the Vatican. Consider seeing the Baths of Caracalla, which will probably become more famous after the Gladiator movie that's just coming out now. Go to St. Paul outside the walls. Go see Bernini's St. Teresa in Ecstasy. Go to the Capitoline Museum. Don't do a day trip to Pompeii from Rome. That's crazy. Go to Ostia Antica instead, near the Rome airport. That's even more well-preserved than Pompeii and empty of tourists. If you're visiting Rome in the summer, go to the catacombs. They're underground where it's always 65 degrees. Or go to Hadrian's Villa at Tivoli. It's also essential to make restaurant reservations in Rome. As a capital city and a pilgrim city, it's got a tradition of cheap, not great food served to people who are just passing through quickly. But of course, there are fantastic, amazing restaurants in Rome, but few of them are really in the historic center. So if food is important to you, number one, be willing to travel beyond the areas near the Trevi Fountain or the Pantheon. Very few good restaurants around there. And make reservations. I know you would much rather wing it, see how you feel in the moment. But in Rome, especially if it's during a busy season, you gotta have a plan. I was just in Rome a couple of weeks ago, and I have to say I was so happy to see the city really cleaned up. A couple of years ago, it was covered in garbage, and there was just so much overgrowth from the weeds and bushes. It was out of control. But now there's a new mayor in place, and the city is considerably cleaner. Right now, most of the monuments are covered in scaffolding, but this is all in preparation for the Jubilee in 2025. So all of that stuff should be coming down soon. Number 3, Venice is not a day trip. And if you know anybody who says, oh no, one day in Venice is enough, that's what I did, send them to me. Just send them directly to me, okay? Now, Venice is magical, but it can be miserable if you are in the crush of day trippers pressing from the train station or the cruise ports down the Grand Canal to Piazza San Marco. I recommend a minimum of 3 nights. Yep, 3 nights. You have to enjoy the city at golden hour when the entire sky turns pink, or after dark when it feels like a movie set. Venice is expensive, so accommodate that in your budget, and you may need also to splurge on a private water taxi if you have early or late departures, because the Vaporetto, the public water taxi, is really, really busy during high season. San Marco is best visited in the evening when the cruise ships leave, and then I would recommend going on one of the night tours of the basilica. You can see the mosaics sparkle and really have the space to feel the awe and wonder that I think is the essence of Venice. Do a boat ride in the northern lagoon at sunset, and don't miss the Jewish ghetto and the secret synagogues hidden in the apartment buildings. They're very beautiful and very moving. Also, spend time in Venice's Accademia. It's the art museum. It's right by the Rialto Bridge, and it's rarely crowded, and you will see the artists of the Venetian Renaissance whose specialty was that ethereal light. Here's what I like to do. If you have headphones or AirPods, put them in. I love the noise-canceling ones. I'm actually pretty obsessed with those. And listen to the music of Vivaldi while you're looking at the art. He's the most famous composer from the Baroque era next to Mozart, and he also happens to be from Venice. Number 4, Tuscany is not the only region where you can enjoy wine tasting. Now, Tuscany has fabulous wines, but just because everybody seems to know the word Chianti doesn't mean Tuscany is the best place or the only place to learn about wine in Italy. One of my favorite areas for wine tasting is northern Italy's Piemonte. This is where you'll find the Nebbiolo grape that's vinified to produce the prestigious Barolo and Barbaresco wines. Another unmissable spot in that region are the wine cathedrals at Canelli, which are also a UNESCO World Heritage Site. Further south is Irpinia, which you heard me speak about in episode 8, Irpinia's Magic Circle. It's east of Naples and just 45 minutes north of Positano on the Amalfi coast, and it's an exciting home to a community of natural winemakers. In Sicily, around Mount Etna, you will find beautiful wines, and there are even some pre-phylloxera vines growing along the slopes of the volcano. Now, it's also important to know that wine tasting is not the same experience throughout Italy. In Tuscany, where wine tours are the most common, you will find a mix of some very large mass-market vineyards that are similar to what you might experience in Napa Valley, where you can just roll up without an appointment. A higher quality vineyard will require a reservation. Now, some of the small estate vineyards will have their tasting rooms inside of a village, like Montepulciano, for example, instead of having the staff available at the vineyard itself. Now, in less famous places, you may be able to meet the winemakers directly. You'll walk into the cantina with them, you may even speak to the enologist. So, if wine is something that interests you, think about the experience that you want to have. Would you prefer an upscale experience where you get to taste the most prestigious wines and have lunch in a really beautifully designed place? Because that exists, especially in Tuscany and in Piemonte. If you want to experience wine from the perspective of farmers, if you'd like to have lunch outside, sit in the fields, you can also have that experience. Number 5, there is no reason to fear Naples. This is an exaggerated, outdated stereotype that no longer applies. Now, I am an avowed Naples lover. I fell in love with the city when it was still a hot mess, and even then in 2001, when stray dogs were living in the train station, I looked around and I thought, this is the most beautiful city. I met the nicest people and ate the most delicious food, and I have been addicted to Naples ever since. Honestly, there are more sights to see in Naples than there are in Florence. And the city has changed enormously in the past 10 years. Mass tourism has definitely arrived, but there are still a lot of travel agents in the United States in particular that will tell you that Naples is dangerous. Now, one of the big reasons for this, other than the fact that they haven't actually been there themselves, is that there are a ton of commissionable hotels and experiences in Sorrento, so they will push you there instead. Naples is the most dynamic city in Italy right now. There are young artists in the Sanità district. There's a scene of upscale fashion designers in Chiaia. If you're a sports fan, then a soccer game at Diego Maradona Stadium, that's unforgettable. The historic center of Naples is a UNESCO World Heritage Site. It has Greek and Roman ruins directly below street level, and there are different entry points around the city. It's like Pompeii, directly below your feet. The famous Veiled Christ is in the San Severo Chapel, and the Treasury of San Gennaro is a collection of jewels larger than the crown jewels of Britain's royal family. Naples is also the birthplace of pizza. And if you have a sweet tooth, there is a rich pastry culture that goes back to when Marie Antoinette's sister was the Queen of Naples. As for day trips, Pompeii and Herculaneum are a short distance away by train, as well as the Royal Palace of Caserta, which is the largest palace in the world. There's an underwater archaeological park at Baia for snorkelers and scuba divers. And of course, there are ferries to Capri, Ischia, and Procida. And Naples is really easy to explore because it has an excellent subway system. I could go on, and I will in a future episode, but this is all to say, there's no reason to fear Naples. Are you ready for the bonus round? All right, here we go. No less than 2 nights in each location. And if you have a 10-day trip, no more than 3 locations. That's it. If you're going during the summer, you've got to balance the cities with coastal locations or places in the mountains. If you try to do Florence, Venice, and Rome all together in the summer, it's going to be brutal. Air conditioning is widely available, but not at meat locker temperatures that Americans are used to. So, if that's a priority, stay in hotels. Nice ones, not Airbnbs. October is not shoulder season anymore. In fact, this past year, it was our busiest month of the year. Nope, that sandwich in Florence is definitely not worth the wait. And yes, the Cinque Terre are as crowded as people say they are, but check the cruise schedules because there are days in between when there aren't like 7 gajillion people disgorging at once. The best beaches in Puglia are on the Ionian side. Sicily is its own trip. Unless you plan to hit only one city like Palermo, and then it's really best to fly there, but Sicily is worth its own vacation. Thank you so much for listening to this episode of Tante Belle Cose. I really hope that you find it helpful and it sets you on the right path with your trip planning. Please do share this if you found it helpful because it helps me so much to find new listeners. We're trying to grow this little community and I'm having a great time with it, so I want more people to join the party. Now, if you would like to join the subscriber community, remember that we have that Q&A session on Monday, December 2nd at 8 p.m. Eastern. We're going to be doing this live on Zoom. But if you can't attend live, just email me your questions and I will answer it on the Zoom. And then later, all the subscribers will have access to the playback. I really hope you'll join us. See you next week.